In the Xuanming realm, foundation stage disciples often left their sects to train and gain experience. Likewise, every year, disciples of the Zio clan descended the mountain to cultivate in the outside world. Most traveled in groups, with arrangements made quietly weeks in advance, because even the most confident among them understood that entering unfamiliar territory alone was not bravery, but poor judgment. The day before departure, Wei Lionhua calmly packed and organized her belongings. Unlike the others, she was not traveling with a group but venturing out alone. Her destination was somewhere only a few dared to approach unless they possessed far higher cultivation. Elder Madame Shen found her that evening. She stood silently in the doorway, her eyes falling on the supplies spread across the bed, the amount of them, the quality, and understood immediately. "Go to places you are not supposed to," she said quietly. Wei Lionhua turned toward her. "Those are the places that make people stronger." Madame Shen paused. "Foundation stage disciples die in those places every year." "I know," Lionhua replied calmly. The elder fell silent for a moment before placing 3 small jade bottles onto the desk without another word. Wei Lionhua froze slightly upon seeing the high-grade healing pills and opened her mouth to refuse. "Elder Shen, come back," Elder Madame Shen interrupted softly. "That is all I am asking." Then she turned and left. Lionhua stood there quietly for a long moment before picking up the jade bottles and holding them tightly in her hands. After taking a slow breath to calm the emotions rising in her chest, she carefully stored them deep inside her spiritual storage bag and went to sleep early. She had a long journey ahead of her. Before dawn, Lionhua passed through the clan gates before most of the departing disciples had even assembled. When the gate guard asked for her destination, she handed over a travel permit marked Eastern Valley, approved by an elder of the disciplinary hall. To reach Beilu Mountain, she would indeed need to pass through the Eastern Valley, so technically, she was not lying. She had gone half a li down the mountain path when footsteps sounded behind her. Lionhua did not turn back and continued walking. "You are not going to the Eastern Valley," Zio Yuchen said as he fell into step behind her. Wei Lionhua stopped briefly. "I never said I was staying there. The valleys beyond the Eastern Valley are prohibited to foundation stage disciples," Zio Yuchen said sternly. "The restriction applies to group entry," Lionhua replied calmly. "An individual disciple with senior endorsement is exempt." "You do not have senior endorsement," he stated flatly. Lionhua finally turned to face him. "Are you offering one?" For a moment, Zio Yuchen only looked at her through the pale mountain mist, something unfamiliar stirring faintly in his eyes without his own awareness. "If something happens in there," he said quietly, "no one will come for you." "That is not a new situation for me," Wei Lionhua replied simply. Then she turned and continued down the mountain path without looking back. Even with ferry ships, it took more than 2 months for Wei Lionhua to reach the Eastern Valley, but the journey was far from wasted. Every time the ship stopped to change routes, she left the nearby settlements to hunt low-level beasts and monsters, gaining as much combat experience as possible. After the long journey, she finally arrived at the outer perimeter of Beilu Mountain. The mountain carried an ancient, oppressive atmosphere that made its danger feel even heavier. She had expected difficulty, but what she encountered was a very specific kind of danger. The outer forest was dense and suffocatingly narrow, with visibility reduced to only a few meters in any direction. Even the weakest beasts there were second-grade and completely unpredictable. Unlike high-grade beasts that possessed intelligence, low-grade beasts relied entirely on instinct, attacking suddenly from impossible angles without warning. After countless battles, Wei Lionhua's combat techniques had improved considerably, and her reaction speed had nearly returned to the level of her previous life. Still unsatisfied, she stood up and continued deeper into the forest. For more than a month, she trained along the outer perimeter, mapping terrain, studying beast behavior, and refining her fire cultivation toward precision. She fought only battles she could win. Survival mattered more than ego. As she gradually advanced toward the inner regions of Beilu Mountain, the injuries began to accumulate. The rumors surrounding the mountain were no exaggeration. Every day brought battles against stronger beasts and ancient monsters. Supported by the life-saving medicines and high-grade pills Elder Madame Shen had given her, she steadily pushed deeper into the wilderness. Eventually, Wei Lionhua felt the limit of her current cultivation. Her foundation stage had reached its bottleneck. To form her golden core, she would have to go deeper still. The inner perimeter of Belu Mountain was on an entirely different level. The trees there were ancient and enormous. The concentration of spiritual energy was so heavy that it constantly pressed against her cultivation. Fourth and fifth grade beasts moved silently through the forest with the calm confidence of creatures that feared very little. Lionhua did not recklessly challenge them, but studied them thoroughly. Using a map of Belu Mountain, she had secretly copied from the clan library. Wei Lionhua searched for hidden cultivation resources that ordinary disciples would never dare approach. In the Zio clan, low-ranking cultivators fought viciously over treasures like these. Here, they existed in abundance, if one survived long enough to claim them. According to an old scroll she once found in the clan library, a rare golden blue spirit flower bloomed deep within Belu Mountain. It was an extraordinary cultivation treasure, capable of stabilizing golden core formation for cultivators standing at the edge of a breakthrough. Wei Lionhua had deliberately suppressed her cultivation for months for the sake of obtaining it. After a month, she finally discovered the cave entrance one morning, a narrow opening hidden along a high cliffside. The spiritual energy flowing from within felt strangely warm and far denser than the surrounding mountain. Lionhua studied the entrance carefully before stepping inside. The narrow passage gradually widened into a natural underground chamber. At its center rested a shallow pond glowing faintly from mineral deposits beneath the water. As she crossed the cave, unease slowly crept into her instincts. The spiritual energy inside was far too dense, far too controlled. Such balance usually meant the territory belonged to a powerful high-level beast, yet she could sense nothing. Wei Lionhua released a slow breath, every instinct sharpening as her guard rose completely. Then she stopped abruptly. Someone was lying on the ground in the distance. It looked like a young man lying on the cave floor to the left of the raised stone platform, half hidden within the shadow of a rock formation. She almost missed him. He was too still, like a corpse, his black robes blending naturally into the darkness of the cave. But the robes were torn and burned in several places, clear signs of a brutal battle. Wei Lionhua did not approach immediately. She stood silently at a distance, carefully observing him. His body was covered in wounds, some old and dried, others still fresh. There was barely a single uninjured patch of skin visible beneath the damaged robes, but it was the wound on his abdomen that held her attention. Deep and wide enough to fit both her fists, it should have killed him long ago. Blood had soaked the stone floor around him, yet a faint blue spiritual energy continued to swirl weakly around the injury, forcibly slowing the bleeding, barely alive. From the tattered emblem on his chest, she recognized the Liang clan insignia, one of the 7 great clans, second only to the Zio clan. Even in such a state, the young man's features remained sharp and refined, carrying the unmistakable bearing of nobility. Wei Lionhua searched through her memories. In her previous life, as Zio Yuchen's wife and future mistress of the Zio clan, she had memorized the important figures of every major clan. More or less, she knew all the notable members of the Liang clan, yet she could not remember this person at all. That alone narrowed the possibilities immediately. A weak cultivator would never survive long enough to reach the depths of Belu Mountain, which meant there was only one answer. He was someone who never existed in the future of her previous life. And there had indeed been such a person, Liang Jianyu, the only grandson of the Liang clan's second elder. A heavenly lightning root genius said to have died young during a beast tide within a forbidden region. The description matched the dying young man before her perfectly. Despite being on the verge of death, he was still maintaining internal spiritual seal to suppress the bleeding from his wound. That alone revealed terrifying cultivation talent and willpower. After confirming his identity, Wei Lionhua looked at him quietly, her thoughts turning calculating. The dying young man sensed Wei Lionhua's presence the moment she stepped into the cave through his sea of consciousness. Though his body could barely move, his consciousness remained awake, quietly observing her. After fighting a high-level beast, he had retreated into the cave to recover his strength, only to encounter another powerful beast inside. He had managed to kill it, but not without cost. His spatial storage bag, containing his medicine and high-grade healing pills, had been destroyed during the battle. Without them, all he could do now was wait for death. But before death, this young woman walked in. Liang Jianyu could feel her standing at a distance, silently studying him without moving closer. He understood her caution. In a place like Beilu Mountain, trust was stupidity. Yet the way she looked at him felt strangely cold and analytical, as though she were calculating his value rather than deciding whether to save him. After a long silence, he finally sensed her approach. Wei Lionhua crouched beside him and calmly fed him a high-grade pill to stop the bleeding. Then another to stabilize his injuries and accelerate healing. Without another word, she moved several meters away, sat down cross-legged, and began cultivating as though nothing had happened. Lionhua had already made her decision. She decided to save this man. Saving him meant the Liang clan would owe her a favor. She would be the beneficiary of this young prodigy. Liang Jianyu and the Liang clan could become her powerful allies when the time came to overthrow the Xiao clan. Sometime later, Liang Jianyu slowly opened his eyes. From where he lay, he saw the girl sitting quietly in the distance, eyes closed in cultivation, completely unguarded on the surface, yet still carrying a strange sense of vigilance. He watched her silently for a moment before closing his own eyes and beginning to cultivate as well. After what felt like eternity, Liang Jianyu woke to the dim gray light of the cave and the sound of complete silence. Wei Lionhua was asleep on the far side of the pond, resting lightly against the cave wall, her posture tense even in sleep as though prepared to wake and fight at any moment, showing her insecurity. Looking down at himself, Liang Jianyu let out a quiet breath. His robes were nearly unrecognizable, torn apart from battle. Most of his smaller wounds had already healed, while the deep injury across his abdomen continued to mend slowly beneath the lingering spiritual seal. He was alive. At some point during the battle with the water serpent, he had truly believed he would die there. Liang Jianyu cultivated quietly for nearly an hour before Wei Lionhua finally opened her eyes. She woke fully in a single breath, instantly assessing the cave, his condition, and every surrounding detail before standing. Liang Jianyu rose as well. "Thank you for saving my life," he said directly, without ceremony. Wei Lionhua gave a small nod. "How did you end up injured so badly?" Liang Jianyu was silent for a moment before answering truthfully. "I was caught in a 6th-grade beast tide larger than expected. After that, I fought a 7th-grade fire wolf. I came here to recover, but accidentally disturbed an 8th-grade water serpent during its breakthrough." Wei Lionhua's eyes widened. "You fought an 8th-grade water serpent?" "And won, technically." Liang Jianyu nodded, specifying that he won. Wei Lionhua looked at him strangely. "You have a wound the size of 2 fists in your stomach." Liang Jianyu paused for a beat before replying calmly. "The word technically is carrying significant weight in that sentence, yes." Lionhua stared at him for another moment before turning and walking toward the glowing pond. "I am Liang Jianyu of the Liang clan," he said as he followed behind her. "Wei Lionhua, Xiao clan." His gaze shifted toward the glowing golden-blue flowers surrounding the pond. "You came for those?" "Yes," Lionhua replied plainly. "I am at the threshold of core formation. There are enough for both of us." Liang Jianyu studied the flowers briefly before speaking again. "My injuries will need at least a week before I can travel." "I know," Wei Lionhua said while bending to carefully pluck one of the flowers. A brief silence followed. Then Liang Jianyu said quietly, "You do not need to stay here because of me." Wei Lionhua did not answer. But she stayed. She had her reasons to stay alongside him. The days were quiet and uneventful. Not an awkward silence, but the kind built from mutual understanding. She cultivated, he healed. Both minded their own business without disturbing the other, but was still guarded against each other. Without ever discussing it aloud, they naturally took turns guarding the cave while the other cultivated or rested. Wei Lionhua was not someone who spoke without reason, and neither was Liang Jianyu. The result became a quiet, unspoken cooperation between them. Most of the food and medicinal pills came from Lionhua's supplies. Occasionally, Liang Jianyu would leave the cave to hunt beasts wandering too close to the territory and return with fresh meat. The atmosphere between them remained strangely comfortable. On the 5th day, Wei Lianhua refined the golden blue spirit flower pollen and prepared for her core formation breakthrough. That evening, she sat beside the glowing pond and began cultivating. Liang Jianyu took watch without being asked. He positioned himself near the cave entrance with his back turned toward her, giving her the privacy to break through without feeling observed or pressured. At the same time, he continued stabilizing his own recovery while keeping his attention fixed on the outside. After several long hours, Wei Lianhua finally opened her eyes. The core formation had succeeded. Her golden core stabilized smoothly within her dantian, pure fire spiritual energy flowing through her meridians with a strength far beyond before. For the first time in months, a faint, genuine smile crossed her face. Liang Jianyu glanced back and paused briefly at the sight of her expression before saying simply, "Congratulations." Wei Lianhua quickly returned to her usual calm expression. "Thank you for standing guard." With the 8th grade water serpent dead, nearby beasts had already begun fighting to claim the territory. Throughout her breakthrough, Liang Jianyu had quietly kept them away from the cave. He only shrugged lightly. "You would have done the same." Wei Lianhua paused. For him, it had been a natural action. For her, she knew she would have done it only after calculating the value of the favor it earned. After a brief pause, she answered softly, "Yes." Nothing more needed to be said. After several days of healing and cultivation, Liang Jianyu had recovered enough to travel again. They packed their belongings, divided the remaining golden blue spirit flowers, and stood together at the cave entrance. Liang Jianyu studied the vast forest ahead. The fastest route out is northwest, but there's a 6th grade shadow panther territory across it. Lianhua replied calmly, "I came in from the east. It's longer, but I know the terrain." After a brief assessment, Liang Jianyu nodded. "East, then." The return journey, which should have taken 3 weeks, ultimately lasted more than 3 months. Part of it was the terrain itself. Beast territories had shifted since Lianhua entered the mountain, forcing them into constant detours. But the larger problem was the increasing number of beasts they encountered along the way. The battles became more frequent as they traveled deeper through the mountain paths. Both of them accumulated injuries, exhaustion, and a growing sense that the mountain itself had personally decided to make their lives difficult. One afternoon, Wei Lianhua sat atop a large stone, regulating her spiritual energy while healing a fresh set of wounds. Across from her, Liang Jianyu calmly wiped blood from his sword as though being chased across half the mountain by murderous high-grade beasts was a perfectly normal afternoon activity. Lianhua slowly looked around at the destroyed trees, scorched earth, and the corpse of yet another beast far above their cultivation level. Then she looked back at Liang Jianyu. Before meeting him, she had crossed much of this same terrain alone for months, dangerous but manageable. Since traveling with him, however, beasts seemed to appear every few hours with the determination of creditors collecting debt. After several days of observation, Wei Lianhua arrived at a simple and deeply unfortunate conclusion. This man was essentially a walking beast attraction talisman. Still, fighting together gradually revealed something unexpected. It was not that one compensated for the other. Both were already strong cultivators capable of surviving alone. But lightning and fire complemented each other in ways neither had expected. Fire controlled territory and forced movement. Lightning struck quickly and precisely. Together, they handled opponents that either of them alone would have been forced to avoid. Without consciously deciding it, they developed habits. She naturally took the left side during battle while he covered the right. Neither of them had ever discussed it. The pattern had simply formed during the first few fights and remained afterward. At some point, Lianhua realized she no longer needed to constantly monitor his position while fighting. She simply knew where he would be. It was an unfamiliar feeling. More than once, when she was moments away from taking a devastating blow, lightning would appear beside her before she even saw him move. Lion Hua eventually realized she no longer needed to constantly track his position while fighting. Every time something enormous and murderous appeared behind her, lightning arrived first. The same was true for Liang Jianyu. More than once, while being chased by beasts, walls of crimson fire would suddenly cut off pursuit before he even looked back. In truth, whatever life-saving favor she believed he owed her had likely already been repaid several times over. Yet neither of them mentioned it. In the cultivation world, life debts were dangerous things to leave unresolved. At some point during the journey, both of them quietly realized the original life-saving favor situation had become impossible to calculate anymore. Neither mentioned it, mostly because neither of them wanted to start counting how many times the other had dragged them out of certain death. While they were resting and recovering from yet another completely unnecessary life-threatening battle, a furious beast roar suddenly exploded through the forest. A wave of heat rolled through the trees a second later. Wei Lianhua slowly turned her head and looked at Liang Jianyu in silence. The meaning behind that look was extremely clear. Liang Jianyu, already familiar with this expression by now, remained perfectly calm despite still feeling somewhat embarrassed. Ever since childhood, beasts, demons, and spiritual creatures had been strangely attracted to him because of his physique and heavenly lightning root. Most cultivators avoided traveling with him for exactly this reason. Another roar echoed closer this time. Lianhua let out a quiet sigh and stood up. At this point, fighting high-grade beasts every few hours had somehow become part of the travel routine. But throughout the journey, Wei Lianhua had never once complained. That realization stayed with him longer than expected. One night, after a brutal battle against a pair of sixth-grade beasts, the two sat quietly beside a small campfire. Liang Jianyu stared into the flames before speaking. "You fight like someone with far more experience than you should have." Wei Lianhua fed another branch into the fire. "I think ahead." A brief pause, Liang Jianyu asked. "Your spiritual root is heavenly grade fire, yet no one has heard of you before." Lianhua looked at him calmly. "I was tested again recently." The Xiao clan disciples underwent 2 spiritual root examinations, once at age 6 to determine initial talent and resource allocation, and again at 15 or 16 before formal cultivation advancement. Liang Jianyu already knew this. A thought crossed his mind. Then why didn't the Xiao clan announce your existence to the other clans? And why allow you to enter Beilu Mountain before reaching core formation? Wei Lianhua remained silent long enough that Liang Jianyu assumed she would not answer. Then she said quietly, "I was an orphan brought into the Xiao clan by an elder." Liang Jianyu fell silent. He understood enough from that single sentence. Every major clan had shadows beneath its surface. Even with a powerful grandfather protecting him, he himself had not escaped the cruelty of the cultivation world entirely. Due to his physique and spiritual root, he was envied and targeted multiple times, even life-threatening situation. After another long stretch of travel, the two paused together along a steep mountain trail where the climb forced them to slow their pace. Liang Jianyu spoke softly. "Is the Xiao clan a good place to stay?" Wei Lianhua answered without hesitation. "No." He turned slightly toward her. "Are you planning to leave?" Lianhua looked mildly surprised that he had understood so much from so little. "I still have unfinished business there," she replied. Liang Jianyu absorbed the answer without pressing further. After a moment, he said quietly, "When the time comes, let me know." Wei Lianhua did not respond. She simply continued walking ahead. Eventually, they reached the outer perimeter. The forest gradually thinned into terrain Lianhua recognized from her earliest days on the mountain. They stopped where the trees ended and open land began. Silence settled between them again, strange and unfamiliar one. Liang Jianyu finally looked at her directly. "I owe you my life, I've already said that, but there's something else I want to say." Wei Lianhua nodded once. "Go ahead." Hesitated briefly before asking, "Where will you go after leaving the Xiao clan?" Wei Lianhua considered the question for a moment. "I haven't decided yet." Liang Jianyu answered almost immediately. "If you need somewhere to go, I can accompany you." Moment the words left his mouth, even he looked slightly surprised. After a brief pause, he added, "When the time comes, I can help you leave the Xiao clan safely. I owe you a favor, and traveling with you wasn't bad." Wei Lianhua raised an eyebrow slightly. Liang Jianyu cleared his throat and looked away. "You're the first person I've traveled with for this long," he said. "Most people avoid doing that." Both of them knew exactly why. a faint hint of amusement appeared in Lionhua's eyes. I noticed. The first time, a small smile appeared on Liang Jianyu's face. I'm not saying you'll need the help, just, if you do, you can find me. Wei Lionhu gave a small nod. I'll remember it. Liang Jianyu held her gaze for a brief moment before adjusting the strap of his pack. Take care of yourself, Wei Lionhua. You too. She turned east and walked away without looking back. Liang Jianyu remained standing there long after her figure disappeared into the trees. Only when the forest finally swallowed the last trace of her presence did he let out a quiet breath, faint frustration flickering across his expression at the unfamiliar feeling lingering in his chest. After a long journey, Wei Lionhua arrived at the Zio clan gates on a clear afternoon, nearly 2 years after she had left. The gate disciples stared at her with undisguised shock. She walked past him without stopping. The compound looked exactly the same. The same stone paths, the same layered rooftops, the same afternoon sunlight falling across the courtyards. She knew every corner of it by memory, yet it felt different now. Not smaller, lighter. She returned to her quarters, set down her travel pack, washed the dust from her face, and sat quietly at her desk. Elder Madame Shen appeared within the hour. The elder stood silently in the doorway, her sharp eyes sweeping once across Lionhua before settling on the golden core aura she no longer bothered concealing. Nearly 2 years of mountain training had changed her completely. It showed in the way she stood, the way she carried herself, and the quiet pressure in the room around her. Golden core stage, Elder Madame Shen said calmly. Wei Lionhua stood and bowed respectfully. Yes, Elder gave a small nod. The rumors did not disappear while you were gone. Zio Mei has continued spreading them quietly. I expected that, Lionhua replied evenly. Elder Madame Shen studied her for another moment before speaking again. Interclan competition begins in 3 weeks. This year's prize is the Red Flame Stone. Wei Lionhua already knew. Every 3 years, the great clans held a competition between their younger generation. This time, the Zio clan would host it. From the moment she had been reborn, she had been preparing for this exact event. I will win it, she said calmly. Elder Madame Shen turned toward the door. There are pills in the chest near the window. Eat something. You look like you survived the last 2 years entirely on determination. Wei Lionhua suddenly recalled someone calmly roasting mountain beasts over a campfire, and before she realized it, a slight faint smile appeared on her face. Mostly determination, she admitted. And mountain beasts. Madame Shen paused at the doorway. Something close to a smile briefly crossed her stern expression. You returned in one piece, as promised. Wei Lionhua went still for a moment before replying softly. You asked me to. Elder nodded once and left. Lionhua opened the supply chest, took the pills, ate a proper meal for the first time in longer than she cared to count, and finally went to sleep. 3 weeks remained until the interclan competition. And for the first time since her rebirth, Wei Lionhua felt truly prepared.